Hey there, Jeep divers. You ever get that nagging feeling, the one where those teeny tiny clauses in contracts, they feel like they're kind of working against you?
Oh, absolutely.
Today we're diving into a Supreme Court case that honestly it went viral because it
Yeah.
felt like that.
Yeah.
We're talking about a housing loan gone wrong, a strike, and a whole lot of questions about, fairness, corporate power,
Mhm.
stuff that keeps you up at night.
Right. It's one of those stories that just grabs you, because it feels so relatable.
Exactly. Get ready to untangle a legal knot that'll have you triple checking all your contracts.
It's a wild one.
So, to set the scene, this case is officially called, get this, Hong Kong and Shanghai Banking Corp., HSBC, Ltd. Staff Retirement Plan,
Ooh.
now incorporated as HSBC Retirement Trust Fund, Inc., and Manuel Estation petitioners,
Okay.
versus spouses Juan Macalang and Ma. Teresa Ophelia G. Galang, respondents.
Oh,
Catchy, I really like
definitely rolls right off the tongue.
G.R. No. Lentine 9565, June 30, 2021. But don't worry, we'll just call them the Galangs for sanity's sake.
Please.
The Galangs, they're just your average hardworking couple trying to, build a life. Ma. Teresa, she worked for HSBC in the Philippines.
Mm-hmm.
And like many employees, she's like, hey, they've got this housing loan benefit. Sign me up.
Smart move. Right. Makes sense.
So back then, these housing loans were managed by the HSBC Staff Retirement Plan.
HSBC SRP.
Exactly. And here's the thing. Back in the day, HSBC SRP, it wasn't like its own separate legal entity. It was like directly under HSBC's wing.
Interesting. So not as clear-cut as it might seem.
Right. So picture this. 1990, Ma, Teresa, she scores a loan for P400,000
Okay.
for 25 years.
That's a long time.
Starts diligently making her payments through, deductions from her salary.
Sensible.
Seems pretty straightforward, doesn't it?
So far, so good.
But here's where it gets a little complicated.
Uh-oh.
See, there were two sets of rules governing this whole loan situation.
Right.
Yep. The mortgage agreement and the HSBC retirement plan rules and regulations.
Two sets of rules. That sounds like a recipe for potential conflict.
You hit the nail on the head.
Ugh.
And guess what? Those two sets of rules, they weren't exactly the best of friends.
Oh, boy. This is where it starts to get interesting.
Hold on to your hats, deep divers, because 1993 rolls around.
Okay.
A massive, and I mean massive, labor dispute erupts between HSBC and, their employees' union. Things get heated, culminates in a strike.
Whoa. A strike. That's serious.
Teresa being part of the union, solidarity and all, she gets dismissed.
Oh, no.
Along with, get this, about 90% of her colleagues.
90%. Wow.
Yeah, so suddenly she's out of a job, and making those loan payments, well, that becomes a bit of a challenge.
I can imagine. Suddenly you're in a really tough spot.
And HSBC SRP, they're not exactly known for their leniency.
Right.
They demand full payment of the loan. Boom, just like that.
That must have been a huge shock.
The Galangs, though, they're fighters. They managed to, gather some funds, pay off those missed payments, and get back on track with their monthly installments. This is December 1994.
Okay, so they're back on the horse.
They kept at it, diligently paying every month all the way until October 1996.
So they're all good, right? Problem solved.
You'd think so, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
But this is where things take a turn, a really, really strange turn.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
Even though the Galangs are totally current, making their payments like clockwork, HSBC SRP starts sending them these ominous reminders.
Reminders for what?
And demand letters for the entire outstanding balance.
Why? But they were paying.
I know, right? It's like they weren't even acknowledging those payments.
Painful.
And the kicker, they're threatening foreclosure.
No way. That's harsh.
Ma. Teresa, she's trying to explain, hey, I'm up to date. Look, I've got the receipts. But it's like talking to a brick wall.
So frustrating. You're doing everything right, and they're still coming after you.
And then, bam, October 1996, they foreclose on their home.
You're kidding.
And just to add, a whole other layer of weirdness to this, the highest bidder at the auction,
Let me guess. Someone connected to HSBC.
Manuel Estation, a vice president at HSBC, and a former trustee of, you guessed it, HSBC SRP.
Wow. That seems a little too convenient.
It's like, we don't care that you're current on your payments. We're taking your house anyway.
That's just not right.
The Galangs, though, they weren't about to take this lying down. They file a lawsuit challenging the whole foreclosure.
Good for them. Someone needs to stand up to that kind of behavior.
This lawsuit, though, it becomes this whole, legal odyssey, back and forth, different courts, different interpretations of the law. It's a mess.
The legal system can be so confusing, especially for regular people.
So let's break down what happened in those lower courts. What did the judges make of all this?
Well, the first court, they actually dismissed the case.
Really? Why?
They said it was premature.
Premature? What does that even mean?
Well, the reasoning was that Ma Teresa's illegal dismissal case, that was still ongoing.
So they were like, let's see if she gets her job back first, then maybe this foreclosure thing will sort itself out.
Exactly. But the Galangs, they weren't giving up that easily. They appealed that decision, and that's when things took a turn, a very unexpected turn.
Ooh, a plot twist. Tell me more.
The Court of Appeals, they actually sided with the Galangs.
What? They nullified the foreclosure.
They did.
But how? Did they say that HSBC SRP didn't have the right to foreclose?
Not quite.
This is getting confusing.
They recognized that HSBC SRP, technically they did have that right, based on those missed payments way back when.
With that darn clause.
Right. But UT, and this is a big but, this HSBC SRP basically shot themselves in the foot.
How so?
By accepting those payments from the Galangs for 2 whole years after the initial default.
So, like, they waved the white flag and then decided to attack again.
It's like they were saying everything was cool, and then bam, just kidding, we're taking your house.
That's just messed up.
The Court of Appeals called it estoppel. Basically, you can't lead someone to believe one thing and then just switch things up on them because it's technically in your rights. That's not how it works.
Estoppel. Got it. So it's all about fairness and keeping things consistent. Makes sense.
And get this, the Court of Appeals, they didn't stop there. They also said HSBC, the parent company, they were liable too.
Hold up. They held HSBC responsible even though the loan was technically through HSBC SRP.
That's right. They saw HSBC SRP as just an extension of HSBC. Like they couldn't just hide behind this separate entity thing.
Talk about a twist. So HSBC loses the foreclosure battle. Andy gets pinned as the bad guy. What did they do?
Well, they didn't take it lying down, that's for sure. Both HSBC and HSBC SRP, they decided to appeal. And where do you go when you want the final word in the Philippines?
The Supreme Court.
Ding, ding, ding. The stage was set for the ultimate legal showdown. And the stakes, they couldn't have been higher.
Okay, deep divers. So the Supreme Court, they had a real puzzle on their hands with this one. Remember those 2 sets of rules, the mortgage agreement and the HSBC retirement plan rules and regulations. They were like the heart of the matter.
It's like they were on a collision course.
And the Galangs, well, they got caught in the crossfire. So what happened? Did the Supreme Court side with the Galangs or HSBC?
Well, it's not a simple yes or no answer.
Figures. This whole case is anything but simple.
The court, they really dug into the details, and they acknowledged that, yeah, technically the Galangs missed those payments back in '94 when the strike happened.
Right. And that darn clause in the mortgage agreement, any missed payment, boom, foreclosure.
Exactly. The court basically said that based on that clause, HSBC, SRP, yeah, they were technically within their rights to start that foreclosure process.
Wait, so they're saying the foreclosure was okay? Even though the Galangs had caught up on those payments and had been, like, religiously paying for years, that doesn't sound right.
Yeah, it does seem a bit unfair, right?
A bit. It's a lot unfair.
And the court, they wrestled with this fairness issue, too. They even looked at some previous cases, Broqueza and Tamonte.
Vaguely.
These were HSBC employees, also dismissed after that '93 strike, and they lost their homes because of foreclosure.
Oh, so this wasn't a one-time thing.
Unfortunately not. The UKT, and here's the crucial difference, in those cases, the borrowers, they didn't catch up on their payments like the Galangs did.
So how did the court square that circle? Because on one hand, they're saying HSBC SRP had the right to foreclose, but on the other hand, it sounds like they're saying it was unfair to do so.
Well, get this. The Supreme Court, they upheld the Court of Appeals decision to nullify the foreclosure.
Wait, really? So they sided with the Galangs?
They did. But with this case, they did it based on estoppel.
Estoppel. That sounds familiar. Remind me.
Remember, it's that principle where you can't, go back on your actions if you've led someone to believe something different.
Right. You can't just change the rules of the game mid-play because you feel like it.
Exactly. The Supreme Court, they basically said that by accepting those payments for 2 years, HSBC SRP implied that everything was A-OK. It led the Galangs to believe they were in the clear. So, doing a 180 and foreclosing after all that, well, the court said that was unfair and inconsistent.
No, HSBC SRP, they basically trapped themselves. Like they built their own cage.
Pretty much. They wanted to have their cake and eat it too, and the court said, nope, not going to fly.
So victory for the Galangs. End of story, right?
Oh, if only it were that simple.
Uh-oh. I sense another twist coming.
You have a good sense for these things. Remember that illegal dismissal case?
The one that was still ongoing when the first court heard the Galangs case.
That's the one. Well, in 2016, a separate Supreme Court ruling came out.
Okay.
And it declared that 1993 strike, the one Ma Teresa participated in, yeah, they deemed it illegal.
And I'm guessing this doesn't bode well for the Galangs.
You're catching on quick. That ruling meant all those employees who were dismissed, including Ma Teresa, they were considered rightfully terminated. And that, well, it changed everything for the Galangs.
So even though they won on this estoppel technicality, this other ruling about the strike kind of pulled the rug out from under them.
You could say that. Because the strike was now illegal, the Supreme Court said that the Galangs were now obligated to pay the full outstanding balance of their loan.
Hold on. So even though they were already making payments, now they have to pay everything, like all at once.
Not necessarily all at once, but they were on the hook for the entire remaining balance. And here's the real kicker. They had to pay it based on the HSBC retirement plan rules and regulations.
Wait, what? Why the switch? I thought the mortgage agreement was the main document for the loan.
That's where those two sets of rules really come back to bite, The retirement plan, it had this clause about employees losing their loan benefits if they were terminated for cause.
Oh, I see where this is going.
And since the strike was now illegal, Ma Teresa's dismissal was considered, you guessed it, for cause.
It triggered that nasty clause.
Bingo. One ruling knocked over another, and the Galangs, they ended up bearing the brunt of it.
It's like a legal domino effect. And the Galangs are at the bottom of the pile. So wait, they went on this estoppel issue, but then they still have to pay the full amount, and it's now based on these different harsher rules.
It's like winning the battle but losing the war.
This is giving me whiplash. Is there anything else?
Well, remember how the Court of Appeals said HSBC, the parent company, was liable?
Yeah, that was a big win for the Galangs.
Well, the Supreme Court actually overturned that part of the ruling.
So they let HSBC off the hook. Even though HSBC SRP was basically their, mini-me back then?
Yeah. The Supreme Court said, nope, HSBC and HSBC SRP, they're separate entities. Even though they were super close, HSBC couldn't be held liable for what HSBC SRP did.
This case is like a legal onion. Every layer we peel back, there's another layer of complexity underneath.
And sometimes that complexity leads to some pretty surprising outcomes.
All right, deep divers, we're back. And wow, what a case. We've gone from a simple housing loan to the highest court in the land, corporate power plays, individual rights, legal twists and turns.
It's a lot to unpack.
It really is. So as we try to kind of piece together all these legal puzzle pieces,
Yeah.
what stands out to you as the biggest takeaway? What should our listeners be thinking about even after this deep dive is over?
For me, it's the reminder that contracts, they're not just these abstract legal things. They're tools. And like any tool, they can be used in different ways, some good, some not so good.
Right. In the Galangs case, that contract, it almost became like a weapon.
Exactly. It almost cost them their home. It's like that saying, the devil is in the details. You really got to read those contracts carefully, especially those tiny little clauses that can have massive consequences.
Absolutely. In this case, it also shows how important it is to have someone on your side who knows the law, someone who can help you navigate all this complexity. I mean, the Galangs, they fought hard, but imagine if they didn't have legal representation.
Oh, absolutely. It's like trying to navigate a maze blindfolded. You need a guide, someone who knows the way.
And it makes you think about those who don't have the resources, or the know-how to fight back. What happens to them when they're up against unfair contracts or predatory practices?
That's a huge issue. I think this case, it really highlights the need for stronger consumer protection laws, and we need regulatory bodies that can step in and kind of even the playing field.
We need referees to make sure the game is played fairly.
Exactly. We can't just assume that big institutions will always act in our best interest, right? The Galang story, it's a reminder that we have to be vigilant, informed, and proactive about our rights.
So, deep divers, what's the message here? What can you take away from this whole saga?
Read the fine print, always. Ask questions if something doesn't seem right, and don't be afraid to reach out to a legal professional if you need help.
Solid advice. This case, it's been a real roller coaster. We've explored this landmark Supreme Court case, right? We untangled all these complex legal principles, and we learned about individual rights, corporate accountability, but ultimately the Galang story, it's about resilience.
And the power of standing up for what's right. They showed us that even when you're up against a giant, you can still fight back.
It's a story that'll stick with you, make you think twice about those contracts, right? Make you want to ask questions and never, ever take your rights for granted. Remember, deep divers, knowledge is power. And we're here to help you, to give you the insights you need to navigate this crazy world. Hit that subscribe button to join us for more deep dives where we dissect the news and uncover all those hidden layers you didn't even know existed.